Adrienne Salinas, life and background. Adrienne Celeste Salinas was a 19-year-old college student attending Gateway Community College in Tempe, Arizona. At the time of her disappearance in June 2013, she was pursuing her education with determination and had expressed aspirations of becoming a journalist. Her father, Rick, remembered her as intelligent, responsible, and motivated, a young woman with clear goals and a deep love for learning. Adrienne enjoyed watching movies, reading books, and spending time with the people closest to her. Physically, Adrienne stood 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed between 100 and 110 pounds. She had black hair, a sun tattoo located on her neck, just below her left ear, and wore a lip piercing set with a clear stone. These details, later significant for identification, also formed part of her distinctive appearance. Beyond appearances, what truly defined her was the closeness she maintained with her family and friends. She shared a strong bond with her younger brother, providing both guidance and companionship in their everyday lives. Adrienne had also been in a long-term relationship with Francisco Arteaga, a young man she had known since 8th grade. Francisco often described Adrienne as his best friend and the only girl he had ever loved. Friends and family alike spoke of her caring nature and her ability to maintain meaningful connections with those around her. Perhaps most central to her life was her relationship with her father. Rick and Adrienne talked every day, and they had planned to celebrate Father's Day together in June 2013. This planned gathering adds weight to the events that followed, underscoring how sudden her disappearance felt to those who loved her. Before the tragedy unfolded, Adrienne's life reflected youth, ambition, and close family ties. The night of June 14, 2013, the party and the argument. On the evening of June 14, 2013, Adrienne Salinas and her roommates hosted a party at their apartment located near West 5th Street and South Hardy Drive in Tempe, Arizona. The gathering drew friends and guests, including Adrienne's longtime boyfriend, Francisco Arteaga. For most of the evening, the atmosphere was social and typical of young college students. But as the night stretched into the early morning hours, tensions began to rise. At approximately 2:30 a.m., Adrienne and Francisco left the apartment together following an argument. Accounts indicate they decided to go to Francisco's Scottsdale apartment in order to talk privately. Their intention appeared to be working through the disagreement away from the crowded apartment environment. Francisco later explained that, while they spoke at his apartment, Adrienne expressed that she did not want to remain there overnight. As a result, he drove her back to her Tempe residence around 3 a.m. This, according to Francisco, was the last time he saw her. Less than an hour later, shortly before 4 a.m., Adrienne was seen again by one of her roommates. This time, she was carrying an overnight bag, a clear indication she planned to head back to Francisco's place, despite her earlier reluctance. That detail underscores Adrienne's determination to reconnect with him and resolve their disagreement. These seemingly ordinary moments, a party, a brief conflict, a late-night return, would ultimately form the final confirmed sightings of Adrienne, what might otherwise have been an unremarkable episode in the life of two young people, instead became the opening sequence in a disappearance that has remained unsolved. The hours between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. would prove critical to the mystery that followed. The car accident and abandonment at approximately 3:45 a.m. on June 15, 2013. A witness contacted Tempe police to report a vehicle accident near the intersection of Ash Avenue and Rio Salado Parkway. The caller described observing a car strike, a median with significant force, causing 2 of its tires to blow out. Despite the damage, the driver attempted to continue forward, an unusual response that drew attention to the scene. When police later investigated, they confirmed that the car involved in the incident was registered to Adrienne Salinas. The damaged vehicle was eventually discovered abandoned nearby, a critical detail that would soon take on major significance. In the unfolding investigation, the fact that Adrienne's car was left behind provided one of the first substantial pieces of evidence connected to her disappearance. It also raised questions about her state of mind during those early mornings, hours. The circumstances suggested that she may have been disoriented, emotionally upset, or experiencing stress that influenced her decisions. Instead of remaining with the disabled car, Adrienne is believed to have returned briefly to her apartment. Accounts indicate that she changed clothes before leaving again, continuing in her apparent attempt to reach her boyfriend, Francisco Arteaga. Phone records later showed that Adrienne made repeated calls to Francisco, underscoring her determination to reconnect with him despite the complications created by the accident. This sequence of events illustrates the confusing and fragmented timeline investigators were left to untangle. The abandoned vehicle, physically present and damaged, stood in stark contrast to Adrienne's absence. What should have been a straightforward response to a car accident instead became the foundation of a deeper mystery. The unanswered questions surrounding her decisions in those final confirmed hours remain a critical part of the case. The final calls and the missed cab pickup between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. on June 15, 2013, the most critical window in Adrienne Salinas' disappearance, unfolded. Phone records indicate that between 4:10 and 4:45 a.m., Adrienne attempted to reach her boyfriend, Francisco Arteaga, through a series of 11 calls. She also sent him a text message stating she was on her way to see him, reinforcing her determination to reconnect after their earlier disagreement. Despite her persistence, Francisco later confirmed that Adrienne never arrived at his apartment that night. At 4:53 a.m., Adrienne took another step to ensure she could reach him. She contacted a cab company and arranged for a ride. Speaking directly with the driver, she confirmed that she would be picked up at the AM/PM convenience store, located near Hardy Drive and University Drive in Tempe. The communication was clear and deliberate, giving investigators a solid timestamp and location tied directly to Adrienne's movements. When the driver reached the agreed pickup spot, however, Adrienne was not there. He attempted to reach her again, but was unsuccessful. Records later revealed that Adrienne's phone had been switched off at approximately 5:07 a.m., only minutes after she had arranged the ride. That action marked the last known activity associated with her. This sequence created a narrow but baffling gap. Within less than 15 minutes, Adrienne went from arranging transportation to vanishing entirely. The unanswered calls to Francisco, the confirmed cab request, and the sudden loss of her phone signal formed the foundation of a mystery that continues to perplex investigators. The events of that final hour underscore how quickly an ordinary night unraveled into an unexplained disappearance. The search and Father's Day realization on June 16, 2013. Father's Day arrived, a day Adrienne Salinas had promised to spend with her father, Rick. When she failed to call or show up, Rick grew increasingly uneasy. Adrienne's silence was not only unusual, but entirely out of character, as father and daughter maintained daily contact. The absence of even a simple message confirmed for Rick that something was deeply wrong. Determined to find answers, Rick went to Adrienne's Tempe apartment. Inside, he found her pets alone, without care or attention, a detail that immediately signaled distress. Adrienne was devoted to her animals, and leaving them unattended without explanation was unthinkable. With no sign of her presence, Rick began contacting friends and family members, hoping someone might have spoken to her. Each call, however, yielded the same answer. No one had seen or heard from Adrienne since the early morning hours of June 15. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Rick reported his daughter missing to the Tempe Police Department. Investigators responded by canvassing the neighborhood, questioning neighbors, friends, and Adrienne's roommates. Search efforts extended to nearby areas, including Tempe Town Lake, as authorities considered multiple possibilities surrounding her disappearance. Attention quickly turned toward individuals who had interacted with Adrienne during her final hours. Francisco Arteaga, her boyfriend, and the cab driver scheduled to pick her up both became persons of interest in the initial investigation. Yet, after providing statements and cooperating with authorities, they were ultimately cleared of suspicion. For Rick, those first days were marked by desperation and fear. What began as a missed Father's Day gathering escalated into the realization that his daughter had vanished. Community members joined in the search, but Adrienne's whereabouts remained tragically unknown. Discovery of Adrienne's remains. August 6, 2013. Nearly 2 months after Adrienne Salinas disappeared, a man in Apache Junction, Arizona, noticed vultures circling his property. Investigating further, he discovered human remains in a desert wash basin. Authorities were quickly notified, and the Department of Public Safety conducted DNA testing to establish identity. Results confirmed that the remains belonged to Adrienne, bringing a devastating end to the search that had consumed her family and community since mid-June. The discovery site was approximately 30 miles from Adrienne's last known location in Tempe, raising immediate questions about how she ended up so far from home. Investigators considered the distance significant, as Adrienne had no known connection to the remote area. This geographical gap deepened the mystery, adding complexity to a case already defined by unanswered questions. An autopsy was performed, but the results offered little clarity. Both the manner and cause of death were ruled undetermined, leaving investigators without definitive conclusions. Environmental exposure, decomposition, and possible relocation of the remains limited what forensic experts could determine. Police later theorized that Adrienne's body may have been moved from another location and deposited in the wash during a rainstorm, though this could not be confirmed. Despite the inconclusive medical findings, law enforcement treated the case as a homicide investigation. The decision reflected both the suspicious circumstances of Adrienne's disappearance and the improbability of her ending up in such a location voluntarily. Yet, despite extensive inquiry, no suspects were ever publicly identified. The recovery of Adrienne's remains reignited media coverage, drawing renewed attention from the public and highlighting the limitations of forensic evidence in cases of prolonged exposure. For her family, the discovery brought heartbreaking confirmation, but no resolution, leaving Adrienne's death surrounded by enduring mystery. Where the case stands today, more than a decade after her disappearance and death, the case of Adrienne Salinas remains unsolved. Officially, the circumstances are classified as a suspicious death, while investigators have long treated the matter as a likely homicide. no arrests have ever been made, and no charges have been filed against any individual. The lack of resolution has left her story suspended between suspicion and uncertainty. From the outset, both Francisco Arteaga, Adrienne's boyfriend, and the cab driver scheduled to pick her up were examined closely by investigators. Each underwent questioning regarding their final interactions with Adrienne. Ultimately, both men were cleared, and no evidence directly linked them to her disappearance or death. Their elimination as suspects narrowed the investigation, but also left a troubling void with no other clear leads emerging. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Tempe Police Department continue to request public assistance. Authorities have emphasized that even small details may prove vital to uncovering the truth. A reward of $20,000 remains available for information that could lead to progress in the case, reflecting the continued commitment of law enforcement to resolving Adrienne's death. For her family, however, the weight of time has not diminished the loss. Her father, Rick Salinas, has been especially vocal, devoting years to seeking answers and refusing to let his daughter's memory fade into silence. His persistence underscores the enduring pain carried by those closest to Adrienne, who still live with uncertainty about what happened in the final hours of her life. The unanswered questions remain stark. Without new evidence or information, Adrienne's death continues to stand as one of Tempe's most haunting unsolved cases, waiting for the moment when clarity and justice may finally arrive.